afternoon. I'm Alexander Brown, and welcome to today's episode of GlobalTalk, the #1 talk show for teens and young adults across Canada. Today, we'll be discussing an important topic in today's world, globalization. The primary issue for today is, to what extent do identity and the forces of globalization shape each other? Today's topic was submitted by Mr. Gardner of Calgary, Alberta. Today, we will have two lovely guests with us, Mr. John Smith of McDonald's and Ms. Maddie Gauthier of French Canadians of Alberta, Inc. Today, they will be answering two different sets of questions that can be used to assist with answering our topic question. As per usual, each of our guests will have 5 minutes to answer these sub-questions, and they will have an additional 1 to 2 minutes to sum up their opinions and answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. John Smith, CFO of McDonald's Canada. Thanks for being able to talk with us today, Mr. Smith. Tonight, I'll be asking you the questions of, what are some forces of globalization, and how do some forces of globalization present challenges to identity? I'll be starting the 5-minute timer that marks your speaking time now.
Well, Alexander, as you may know, I work for one of the largest corporations in the world. To get this far, we needed firm knowledge of forces of globalization in the modern world. Two of these primary forces are how media uses communication, technology, and the transportation of goods. One of the big things we did to get people to buy our products was that we had to make it available to everybody. Thus, we became a transnational company. A transnational company is a company which is based in one country, in our case, the United States, but also creates or sells products in other countries.
Please go on.
It took us a long time to become recognized by most parts of the world. Our methods of being known globally included the media, such as being advertised on television shows and other languages besides English to convey ourselves. To be able to get our products to consumers quickly, we have used a common method of shipping products in large shipping containers that allow us to easily send ingredients and other materials cheaper and faster than if we had sent it in smaller cartons. As for the second question, I would like to compare it to my company once again. For example, we have policies that do not disregard cultural or ethnic backgrounds, and thus resulting in a homogenized workplace. This is basically the erasing of difference between people. This also gives workers an opportunity to become part of the larger community of McDonald's within our company. Though it is commonplace for a company, for example in America, to speak English, we use methods of accommodation to make space for other languages. Also, from what I've seen, even though it's a wonderful tool, the internet can prove dangerous to other cultures, as it can have effects of assimilation due to users wanting to fit in more with other cultures and subcultures that they might encounter on the internet. As well, many advertisements on the television are in English, at least in Canada, the United States, and many places around the world, and also leads to assimilation because it provides a dominant language in the business.
Okay. Well, Mr. Smith, seeing as we still have a little bit of time left, I'd just like to ask you a few questions about transnational companies, or some other transnational companies. For example, one of my primary questions here is with your, how many child companies does McDonald's own? Do you know? Or is it just McDonald's Incorporated?
It is just McDonald's Incorporated.
So it's not like, say, Disney, where they own Hollywood Studios, Marvel, and Lucasfilm?
No, it is not like that. We are our own company. We got this far just by using media and stuff.
Okay. Do you have any other examples of uses of media, like product placement in films or anything that you can think of?
Yeah. There was this one time where we had to advertise our products in China, and we had to do this one Chinese video supporting the Chinese government for also basing it on McDonald's. It's about food, and the government supports it.
Okay. Well, time's up, actually. So, thanks for your input. Would you like to use the extra minute that you can use to create a summary of your answers?
Yes. Well, overall, some of the forces for globalization are also some of the dangers of globalization. Among these, the biggest one that I've noticed to have effect on our culture is media. The media is good and bad. Good in that it can be used to spread ideas and information. Bad in that it can be used to diminish cultural differences.
Okay, that's a fantastic summary, Mr. Smith. Thank you for being with us here today, and have a safe trip back home.
Thank you.
It's now time for our second guest tonight, Ms. Maddie Gauthier. Please welcome her. Welcome, Ms. Gauthier. Thanks for being with us tonight. For today, the questions that you will have to answer are, how is identity affected by economic, political, environmental, and social dimensions of globalization? And how do some forces of globalization provide opportunities to affirm and promote identity? I'll be starting the timer that marks the beginning of your 5 minutes now.
Well, as you may know, I'm the head of the French Canadians of Alberta Incorporated. Excuse me. I've seen many dimensions of globalization, both good and bad. Starting with the first question, identity can be affected by the economy because of the cost of transport, production, space, and many more variables. Economies...
Can you provide an example, please, of these variables that could happen?
Say, like...
The recent oil drop can affect this?
Yeah. Economies of scale, which are the savings that come from producing and using and buying large quantities of items, play a big part in the purchase of different goods and services from all across the world. This can cause strain on the workers and indigenous people of the place of the manufacturing company by lowering their wages and taking away their land. This also concerns the political aspect of globalization by influencing wages, products, and costs. For example, in South American countries, there are many banana plantations, most of which are under the control of transnational companies. Because the transnational companies have such a large influence on the world, the small banana plantations need to sell their bananas at a higher cost than the transnational companies to make a profit. With the loss of the land, the environment is destroyed, reducing biodiversity in plants and animals.
To interrupt again, but would this be similar to the events of, say, the decline of the Amazon rainforest?
Yes, it would be.
Biodiversity is good, kids. Back to you.
As well, with chemicals and hazardous materials are often used to save money while manufacturing goods, and these chemicals have negative effects on the environment, as well as on the people working with them and the consumers. Both success and loss can come from globalization, sprouting from the difference of wages and the loss of land. And as for the second question, there are many ways to promote and affirm identity within globalization. Speaking from experience, there are many ways using the forces of globalization to spread information about culture. In my organization, we mainly use the media to spread information about the French Canadians. This helps affirm our language, customs, and way of life. As well, many jobs and opportunities come from the spread of information. In my opinion, cultural revitalization, which is the process of promoting and affirming individual and collective identity, is extremely important because of the negative effects that come with media. An example of this is with government services, such as offices, hospitals, CBC, as they offer services in both English and French.
Sorry to interrupt, but for an example of organizations using the media to help affirm identities, besides your own, this is less of a question personally, but mostly for the viewers here, there's organizations like this all over Canada, correct?
Yes.
I know here in Alberta, since we are filmed in Edmonton, just in Alberta alone, there are multiple websites for, say, Métis heritage sites, correct?
Yes.
Do you know if they operate similarly to your own?
I believe so, yes. It's basically about the same topic of promoting and affirming identity, no matter what kind of culture, what kind of way of life. It's the same concept.
And I guess for East Coast viewers, there's the organizations that help promote Acadians. They were for those of you that don't know, the Acadians were exiled from their homes in Nova Scotia area during the French and British wars in Canada's very early beginnings. But anyways, okay. Your 5 minutes have actually ended just now, Ms. Gauthier. Would you like to use the bonus minute
Sure,
to make
yeah.
a summary of your answers?
Thank you. So within globalization, there are many forces, including economic, political, environmental, and social. All of these have negative and positive effects on identity and culture. There are many ways to use them, depending on the audience you want to reach. In my work, I tend to stick to the media to promote and affirm identity.
Okay, so for those of you who'd like to know, Ms. Maddie Gauthier of French Canadians of Alberta, Inc. Do you know the URL offhand? I can't seem to remember. What is it, like frcaalberta.ca or .com?
Yeah, fcmg.ca.
Oh, there you go. Please, have a safe trip home.
Thank
Wrote
you.
something nicely recently.
Yes, thank you.
As we've heard from both of our guests, globalization has an interesting effect on our world. We've heard of examples of it causing a loss of people's culture while simultaneously reinforcing others' culture. For one example, Mr. Smith spoke about how he's seen assimilation on the internet at times within his own company. But on the other hand, Ms. Gauthier uses her organization to help promote the collective identity that she's a part of. However, one of the more interesting impacts of man's identity on culture was one that my younger brother told me recently. A man who created a video game, which was produced by Nintendo. This video game, called The Legend of Zelda, was heavily influenced by the original designer, Shigeru Miyamoto's childhood adventures in his hometown of Kyoto, Japan. This shows how his identity has shaped millions of people around the globe. To promote the game, the company which developed it had to advertise it using the media, transport it using the containers that are used to ship materials around the globe, to have influenced many identities using the forces of globalization. There are many, many other similar stories like this, as in with the writer of To Kill a Mockingbird, who incorporated elements of her childhood into the novel itself. And many other sources of media have been released all over the world. And these sources of media are some of the truest, most pure ways that globalization and identity shape each other. One man's identity shaped other people's identity all over the world. In turn, they shaped globalization with their identity. That's it for tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that all of us here were able to educate you further. Maybe, just maybe, using this piece of media, we're able to shape your identities in a positive way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.